Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Today's guest, Ellen Bennett, went from a $10 an hour line cook to building a multi-million-dollar apron empire by dreaming big. She's the founder and CEO of Hedley Bennett, a LA-based apron and workwear company that was born in a restaurant kitchen out of the need for a better working and better looking apron. The name is a nod to Ellen's English and Mexican roots. Hedley Bennett now outfits some of the most prominent chefs and makers in the world. And Ellen's colorful aprons have amassed a huge following from celebrities like Martha Stewart, Alton Brown, and Jessica Alba. You'll never know where to start until you start. Ellen's new book, Dream First, Details Later, is a must-read for anyone who wants to silence their inner critic and get out of their own way. In our conversation today, we talk about turning your ideas into action, resilience, and hustling your way to the top, and flat out dreaming big. Buckle up. Here's my conversation with Ellen Bennett. Well, Ellen, what fun. I tell you what, as I was reading your book, I saw so many parallels between your entrepreneurial mindset and the athlete mindset, right? The athlete mindset of, and the entrepreneurial mindset of grit and failure and curiosity and a desire for feedback and hustle and all that. And I love how you talk about how the apron is sort of a game day, jersey, which is super cool. I dig the analogy. Do you think there's a lot of parallels between the entrepreneurial mindset, right, and that athlete mindset?
1,000%. I think every time you show up for a game or any sort of sport that you're involved in, you have to give it your all, and you have no idea what that outcome is going to be. And that's what it is like to run a business or start a business. You don't know where the heck you're going to land, but you're going to try your damnedest to land strong and to land whole. So, yeah, it's about the closest thing you could possibly compare to entrepreneurialism.
Well, I love how you draw on it. Your career path, of course, is so incredibly unique. I just wanted you to walk us through your sort of resume, right? I sort of have air quotes on that because I want people to really understand your hustle and your grind and your grit. To me, is unbelievably impressive.
Thank you. It is definitely a windy journey, and I like to share it because sometimes when the only journey you see is a straight path, you think that you're a failure if you're doing anything but that. And life is incredibly windy, and some people talk about it and other people don't. I wanted to write a whole book about it and show the colorful array of situations that happen when you are trying to find that thing that fills you up and makes you want to go start something. And so for me, it really began when I was much younger and I moved to Mexico City when I was 18. I'm half Mexican, half English. And I had always been super drawn to Mexico. So I went there. My parents were like, that's the craziest idea you've ever had. We can't support you to do that. And so I got every job you could possibly imagine, from being the lottery announcer for the Mexican lottery, literally on television, where I would announce the winning lotto numbers. I was a simultaneous translator for the Mexican Railroad Union. I taught English classes, like private lessons. I was a booth babe. So at a trade show, I would talk to people about whatever product I was selling that day in like a little suit, selling everything from bulletproof vehicles to canola oil. And you can imagine that all of my friends back at home in LA were going to college. They were graduating. They were beginning their perfect straight lives of everything in its right place. And meanwhile, Ellen was in Mexico City, living on her own, working as a lottery announcer. And everybody was just like, what are you doing? And honestly, I had to put my blinders on because I knew that my path was a little different and that was the path that I needed to be on to find the thing that really completed me. And So in all of these things that I did, I was learning different lessons. I was learning different things. But in that moment, it felt totally bonkers and totally wild.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the journey I needed to be on. So it wasn't straight. It wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for me. It was perfectly imperfect, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Well, and it's worked, to put it mildly. Let's dig into the birth of your company, right? Hedley and Bennett, which is how your book opens. How did it turn from an idea, right, into what it is, into action?
It started with one order. I worked at a 2 Michelin star restaurant and at another restaurant, and as well as a personal chef. And this was after I'd lived in Mexico for several years, graduated from school, moved back to the States, and got a few jobs in the culinary space. And I had been looking at our uniforms and just thinking, God, these suck so bad. Why are they so horrible? Everybody looks and feels absolutely disgusting, yet we are like athletes in the kitchen.
Right. Sure.
And we're working at a 2 Michelin star restaurant. So this isn't exactly, Wendy's down the street. We need to look and feel great. And so I had this idea and I put it out into my own world, right? It was in my head and banging around. And I got a doing business as, which is my business license in California. And that's it. That's all I had. And I had my idea. And a couple of weeks later, my chef comes up to me and says, hey, there's a girl. She's going to make aprons for us. Would you like to buy one? And it was just like somebody ripped open the sky and there was this opportunity shining its giant head on me. And I was like, this is it. I have to say something. I can't not wait. I have an apron company, right? And so I said, Chef, I have an apron company. I will make those aprons for you. What's our turnaround? I will do it faster and better. And let's make this work. And you tell me what you need and we will make it happen. And I just convinced him right there on the spot in the middle of his kitchen. And by the way, he was like, you're a line cook in my kitchen. What in God's green earth are you talking about? Like, this is crazy.
Sure.
But yet he gave me the order. And that is how Hedley and Bennett began. I had no business. I had nothing other than a business license. I didn't have sewers, a pattern, nothing. But I had this idea and I had the conviction that if I got this first order, I would figure out the rest of the details later. And I did. And I delivered that first apron order and the company began, and it was not off to some like perfect start. And then everything fell into place from there. There were a bajillion catastrophes after that, but I began. And that is the part that is the hardest.
Discovering the gaps and listening to your customers was really the approach, as I understand it, that you took to drive and grow the business. How did you solicit sort of that feedback and then incorporate it into the way that you did what you did and do what you do? And as you've gotten bigger, how do you continue to pull that out from folks to grab that feedback, incorporate it to continue to over deliver to the people that you serve, to your customers?
Well, when I began, I really focused on what I had and not what I didn't have, right? I didn't have investors or some big plan on how I was going to make this happen. But I had myself and I had these incredible chefs that I had access to because I was working at such a wonderful restaurant or a couple of restaurants. And so I just thought about them as my allies, my co-pilots, my wingmen in inventing what I was doing. So I asked them, what do you need? What do you want? What do you hate about your uniforms? How can we make them better? Tell me everything you're thinking. And then I was so freaking excited about what I was doing that they got amped about it. And next thing you know, we're looking at fabrics together and they're like, the straps are so uncomfortable. I hate that my pockets always rip off. And the fabric people use sucks. Why don't we, it'd be so cool if you used Japanese materials and whatnot. And, we're already importing fish from Japan. It's like $1,000 tunas and John Dory's and all kinds of crazy things. So in my mind, there was no other alternative but using fantastic ingredients. So between their ideas and my kind of like intuition on how to build it all, we created those first aprons. And it was a live focus group because they would place a custom order, I would deliver it, and they would give me instant feedback. And they'd say, I like it, but this is not, this isn't working. This feels nice, but this pocket isn't the right spot. Like, can you change it for me? And I was a one-man band. So, I'm working with the sewing team. I'm delivering it. I'm charging the order. Like, I'm doing it all. So I heard every single piece of feedback from start to finish. And I would tweak and modify and pivot along the way to just make it easier the next time around and the next time around. And that little ball that I was pushing up the mountain just like kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the momentum of more and more customers went from one apron order to 5 to 10 to 50 to 100 and so on. And that evolution of never stopped learning, it never stopped. Like to this day, our entire customer experience team and our marketing and sales team, everyone has feedback loops that we've designed within the organization so that we continue to actually listen to what is happening on the front line.
How did Hedley and Bennett evolve from, obviously this story, what you just shared, right? A simple product, to your desire to create the world's best apron, as you talk about, to a lifestyle brand, right? With a really clear mission as well.
It took a lot of windy turns. And frankly, when I began it, I was 24 years old and I said yes to everything, even if it didn't. Looking back, there were a lot of things I spent so much time on that I didn't need to. And there were moments where I went above and beyond for people when they didn't even necessarily appreciate everything we were doing as an organization. Mm-hmm. But we had to do those things to really learn what mattered and, where do you focus your effort and where do you get value versus effort? And, all of these things were just gigantic MBA style learning lessons in life, right? You couldn't learn it faster than just failing at it. And along the way, we started to realize like what works and what didn't work as an organization and, chiseled away at the focus towards, okay, we're not just making aprons here. We're actually building a community. All right. And this community is filled with all these incredible people and all these chefs. But now there's all these people at home and they're home cooks. Okay, well, what do home cooks need? And it was just kind of like never letting that curiosity die. There's a line in the book that says, like, when you get to somewhere, you got to go to the next somewhere. And that idea of never stopping, never just sitting down and saying, oh, we made it. Because the day you say that is kind of the day that it's over in anything, because you lose the special sauce that differentiates you from the next guy over. Anybody can put a business plan together and have the right finance infrastructure and the right team members in place. But if they don't have a product that people care about and that there's a liveliness to it, it just kind of doesn't matter to the world. And that's what we've always kept alive.
Right. It's this, I haven't arrived mindset, right? I'm not there mindset. It's this constant desire. Totally.
Exactly. This permanent sense of, I need to keep getting better. I need to keep trying. And because of that, even if we had competitors along the way, we were always pushing ourselves to get stronger, better, faster, evolve, learn, change, and just march forward.
And at some level, right, I mean, that is anchored in you are threaded with curiosity, right? You're threaded with the desire that failure is okay. That's how we learn and grow, right? I mean, that's just in your DNA, clearly, and something you lean into all the time.
Yeah. And I didn't have any other alternative. There was no path to doing it the comfortable way. So I just blazed forward and got people to come join this crazy crusade to make a fantastic apron and outfit people with it and inspire that sort of dignity and pride in it. And getting people to recognize that, frankly, it's more than an apron, right? It's the attitude that we are really embodying and pushing. And now that we do other products, we bring that same level of chutzpah to anything Hedley and Bennett touches. And that is how we evolved from just, a custom apron company for chefs into a kitchen and an apron and kitchen gear brand that outfits people at home and professionals alike.
You've outfitted about every celebrity chef around. Was that part of your strategy, to intentionally go after them as influencers, or did that sort of happen organically?
It happened a little organically because I worked at Providence here in LA, and my chef would be invited to the best events in the country that had anything to do with food. And so the other chefs there were the likes of Martha Stewart and David Chang and Nancy Silverton and people like that were just at the top of their league. And then because I was hustling my way into this event, telling my chef, let me come work for free. You don't even need to pay me. Just let me come with you. I'll help you. And, I'd be at the front of the food event table with him and all the team are making the food in the back. And I'm like, have you ever heard of Providence? You need to come by. It's fantastic. Just like his little spokesperson, a maniacal little line cook who also sold aprons. And, they just liked me. And so he would let me come to these events and I'd befriend chefs and I'd be on the line with them and they're making, some cucumber salad. And I'm like, oh, did I tell you I'm working on these aprons? They're really cool, but I'd love to show you. Can I ever bring them by the restaurant? And they'd say, sure. And I'd be like, awesome. What's your number? And right there, I'd take their number down. I'd put my number in their phone. And next thing you know, I'm showing up at Michael Voltaggio's restaurant at 2 p.m. the next day. And he's like, oh my God, you came. And I'm like, yeah, what else did you think I was going to do? Let's talk aprons.
That's outstanding.
Showing up.
Yeah, right on, girl. I am there. As you started growing, right, and you started to sort of see, man, I got something here, and you probably needed to hire some people to help you. What were the first few people that you pulled in to help you scale?
It was truly just friends of friends, and it was a scrappy ragtag operation, I got to say. It was the first handful of years of Hedley and Bennett were me believing that I could will things into existence and just shine my way into the next thing. And just with like grit and hustle, I could make it. And I quickly realized that you needed infrastructure and you actually did need some details along the way, but you didn't want to get, overwhelmed by them. You needed a balance. You needed the dreams, you needed the details. And so I started backfilling the details and hiring accountants and bringing on people as I slammed my face into the ground and realized, well, you can't do it that way. Okay, get back up. Let's try that one more time. Oh, you're still doing it wrong. How do we do this differently? And with each failure, I just would get back up bleeding and say, okay, let's find that next right person. And I hired a lot of different people and I learned a lot about how to work with people because can you imagine being a line cook and then go into running a business? Like it's a very dramatic shift with how people interact with each other. In a restaurant, it's like, this sucks, fix it. And you're like, okay, yes, chef. And that's it. In a corporate environment, you're like, we're going to have a sit down and talk about what went right and what went wrong. Let's draw out a plan and maybe
open to some feedback?
Yeah. Let's pull out the whiteboard and talk about 3 ways we can do this better.
Right.
It's very different.
In just a minute, we'll get back to the show. But first, here's a special invitation to join my group coaching community, Game Changer Leadership Huddles. Every month, we explore a different topic to help you grow personally and professionally. Topics range from how to have difficult conversations to energy management to negotiation tips. If you want to be part of a growing community that will challenge and support you on your journey, then sign up today at mollyfletcher.com/leadership-huddles. Again, that's mollyfletcher.com/leadership-huddles. And for our podcast listeners, use the discount code GAMECHANGER to get special pricing. I can't wait to see you in the huddles. Aprons aren't just for the kitchen, right? Like you've collaborated with companies like SpaceX, Google, Lexus, and crafted these functional aprons. How do you decide what opportunities to go for when they're outside of your sort of traditional business lane? And have those helped you accelerate some professional growth, some business growth?
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, we would say yes to everyone and their mother, literally, and make aprons. If you wanted a pony on your apron, we would figure out how to stick a pony on the apron. At this point, we don't do that anymore. We do customization, but really it's about 20% of our business is focused on restaurant land. 80% is direct to consumer. And that growth happened naturally. And you'd see all these chefs on, we outfit every show on the Food Network and Top Chef, and you'd see that little red ampersand on the chest, and people would recognize it, and they'd want to do that at home and feel legitimate and feel professional in their own way. And if they had a Le Creuset, Dutch oven, they wanted to have a Hedley and Bennett to go with it and their Vitamix. So it started to become the tools you needed to look and feel the part, even at home. And that evolution really happened through collaborations. As you mentioned, those were some of the big companies we worked with. But then we started working with companies like Vans and Madewell and Red and Parachute Home. And that helped propel us into this other universe, which was the home consumer. And there's a whole chapter in my book about it. Yeah, on like how to do great collaborations that are genuine and awesome and don't feel false, right? Because you see companies do collaborations and you're just like, oh, that is not a good idea. That doesn't, no, don't do that. And they're doing it. And so
Right.
we never wanted to do that.
Right. So 80% of your business is B2C.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure COVID maybe accelerated that for you a little bit, huh?
Oh, dramatically, because everyone was at home, they were cooking, and that really, really moved us into the direction that we had been working on for quite some time.
Ellen, every entrepreneur hears the word no a lot, right? What is the word no? What does it mean to you?
No to me means turn left or turn right. It means pivot, adjust course, but don't stop. It doesn't mean stop moving. It means proceed, but proceed in a little bit of a different direction and figure out how you can sort of keep it going in the direction you want to go, even if it's not exactly the way you thought it would land.
Right on. No, it's just a little bit of feedback, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, all right, I'll just tweak that a touch, but I'm going to still be near you. So don't worry, this still might happen.
Hit me with a story or maybe an example of how resourcefulness and sort of you clearly have a solution-oriented mindset, got you through what were some speed bumps along the way.
Well, when I first started Hedley and Bennett, I had very little to no resources. I was reinvesting every penny I had back into the company, and I made a sort of commitment with myself that I wouldn't spend more than I made. And so I had to be very scrappy and thoughtful about cash flow. So one of the things I did to be resourceful was I would barter things all the time. I bartered for our very first pattern. I asked somebody who was a friend who's great at all these things. I said, hey, I'll make you dinner or breakfast or whatever. Just help me make this pattern I need to do. And I knew a pattern costs roughly $150, $250. And so I said, let's do this. I work at Providence. That's fancy. And he was like, done. And so it was just thinking about the things that I had. What were my skills that I could offer to the world? And how could I put those in motion to get the thing that I needed? And it was really helpful to do that because I got my pattern. He got an amazing meal and everybody won. And I've done that in bigger settings and smaller settings. I've traded things for other stuff and everybody's got a skill. Everybody's got something they can offer. So just think about that when you say, next time you say, well, I can't afford it or I can't have it. Well, think about how you could have it and what you could offer to get it.
Sure. And there's a cool section in the book where you talk about some tips for how to sell, which I think is interesting without feeling transactional. I'm a big proponent of sort of staying relational inside of these kinds of moments, not transactional. Can you share your approach to that mindset?
Definitely. I think back to the early days of Hedley and Bennett. It was all about make friends with people before you even begin to think about, do they need this product from you? And then you really get to hear from them. And it's not as a transaction already. They don't feel guarded. So you can actually understand, do they need that? Is it going to help them? Is it going to benefit them in some way? So don't start from a place of, I want to sell you something. Start from a place of, I want to learn about this person and I want to get to know them. And what are their pain points? What are the things that are happening? And a lot of times I would start there and people would tell me about their restaurants and their family and all this stuff. And I wouldn't even bring up apron. And it wasn't until they're like, so what do you do? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I have an apron company. And so like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, yeah, I started because, I hated our uniforms. They really stunk and they don't fit very well. And then, maybe in the conversation, they brought something up that said, I'm thinking about a remodel and I want to get my team something different. I'd be like, yeah, if you ever need anything, let me know. But I wouldn't beat them over the head with it. I simply was there because I was actually excited to befriend them as a person because they're cool people. And next thing you know, they'd be like, well, hey, maybe I want to look at that. But they would be asking me, not me really badgering them for it. And so it felt very organic and very natural. And I was there. They wanted it. They knew I was doing it. I made myself known for what I did, but I did not hound people in a way that was unfriendly, or like when you walk into, a store where they're just like, hi, can I help you with something? What can I get for you? Do you need that? Do you want that? And you're just like, stop talking to me. You don't like it. You kind of repel them. And so don't ever make people feel that way. It's just the worst. They're humans. Treat them like a human.
For sure. And how do you coach people to do that? I mean, you were doing that at a time in your life when some could say, God, you're maybe feeling a little bit desperate, but you didn't show up that way at all. You showed up authentically and relationally. How'd you rewire your mindset for that in the spirit of wanting to sort of get some deals done?
Yeah, well, I absolutely recognized how I felt when people did that to me, and I didn't like it. Mm-hmm. And I am from the restaurant industry, and everyone's trying to hustle everybody for something all the time. And, it's like the wine guy that shows up at 2 with a case of wine. He's like, hey there, I want to show you what I've got. And you're just like, oh God, I don't want to talk to you. I never wanted to feel like I was that person. So that I was intruding into someone's space and making them listen to something they didn't want to hear. So if I did talk to someone and I did have their ear, I would approach them from a very humble enthusiasm standpoint. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I started this thing. It's really cool. I've been doing it a bunch. And I'd tell them what I was doing with other people, not what I could do for them. And then if it was something that they connected with, then they would be like, oh, awesome. Well, like maybe I want to see it too. And I'd be like, awesome. Let me know. I can come by next week. I'll be happy to show you our stuff, versus me being like, hey, I have an apron company. I want to come by next week. Can I show this to you tomorrow? Without actually hearing, do they need that? Hearing about their life, listening to them, getting to know them. Like, don't start with the transaction, start with the person.
The relationship. Sure. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes you see entrepreneurs make, early on, right, when they're kind of getting started?
A lot of overthinking things, just worrying about the details before honing in on what's your North Star. For me, it was like, make the best apron. Okay, great. That was the North Star. And it's like a sailboat. I kept tacking. I kept turning left, turning right. Okay, too much wind over there. No, people aren't liking this. Okay, try this. Okay, actually, they didn't love that style as much, but it seems like they're interested in this style. Great, we're going to do more of that. And really recognizing where the direction is flowing and where the energy is going. And that helped me be very alert and go spend my energy in the right places. And sometimes when you are so preoccupied with like, well, I need to have the perfect website and the perfect business cards and the perfect everything, you miss the opportunity right in front of your face because your head is in the details and you're not just embracing that theory versus the way it actually happens is very different. And sometimes people just want the plan to be executed exactly as they thought. And if it isn't, they feel like a failure. And that's just not true.
I would imagine it's obviously a huge transition, right? Going from founder to CEO. What was your biggest leadership hurdle early on? And what do you learn from it?
I think the people side, ironically, when you are working with people where they're your customers and they're your, I call them our apron squad, everybody that wears Hedley and Bennett. It's a very different relationship. It's very, me coming to them and helping them get the thing they need. And in my mind, it was so different. And then I realized, like, actually, my team is another pool of people that also needs servicing in a way, right? They need to be listened to. They need to be taken care of. They need to have resources. They need to have tools. You need to prep for them. You need to tell them where you're headed. And I spent a lot of time just like building as many customers as I could, because I was really a one-man band for a long time, that I didn't put the time and energy internally into the processes that we needed. And it made it really challenging for our team. And so I had to eventually, there's a chapter in the book that says, like, you got to get off the bike to fix the bike. I had to come to terms with my own mistakes as a leader and just realize, like, I actually need to give my team certain bits of structure, and I need to do things differently, and I need to let go of other things that I'm not as good at so that people can take over those parts. And letting go of things when you are the one-man band is pretty hard. And sometimes people and businesses fail at that point because they don't want to let go. So It was a whole evolution, and I got an executive coach who really helped navigate those times for me.
I bet. Yeah, that was a bit of a mindset shift, I would imagine, right? Sort of saying, how do I look internally so I can serve the people that I lead so that if I pour into them, they'll pour into the business?
100%.
Ellen, how do you think about building confidence, right? I mean, you've obviously, barreled through some tough things and created some incredible things, right? How do you think about building confidence?
Well, I think about it as little and big steps. It's like rocks and sand, right? Together, they fill a whole jar. And you have big moments that are massive where you think, holy cow, I can't believe I got through that one, and I showed up and I got it to the other side, and I feel so much stronger. And then you've got the little ones. So like, okay, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and take that Peloton class I've been thinking about. And I did it. And now I feel that much better, right? So it's little and big notches of notches on your confidence belt that make you say, okay, I can do this. And it is not just given, it's earned. And some people, I completely recognize, some people are born with a ton of confidence and other people are not. So you have to just like work at it. If you're not good at something, show up and try it. And every time you try it and you suck at it, keep trying at it until you get better. And that will take you from a place of being decent to being fantastic at it. And guess what? Your confidence goes up with that. And people recognize it too. They recognize when people are out of their comfort zones and they salute it. They're like, man, that's cool, because not everybody wants to do it. First sign of failure, like, I'm out. And you don't want to be categorized as that person. You want to be the one that showed up anyway. As
a leader, how do you work to build confidence in the people that you lead?
Well, we just hired an amazing art director last week who's moving out from New York to join us. And when I sat down with her and we did our onboarding process, I told her, hey, like, I'm expecting you to fail a lot and frequently and to try things that are unusual. And that is okay if they don't work, because that is where you're going to push the brand to the next level and like be that creative force that we need. And, we are here to stand behind you and support you in all these wild endeavors. And she was just like, oh my God, that is so awesome. Thank you for that kind of allowance, saying you can do this and don't not fail. So I think it's talking about it, normalizing it, and how you react when someone does fail. And that's something that I've been working on, even with myself and with the team around us. Just, okay, it didn't work out. Okay, so what didn't work about it? And then how do we learn from it? And how do we march forward? Being less emotional and more objective about it.
Sure. God, what a gift you gave her. That's cool. As you reflect on the roller coaster over the last year or so, particularly, right, what are a few life lessons, right, or silver linings that have maybe inspired you to think differently as a leader, maybe personally or professionally, or, across sort of various spectrums, right?
I think that we have had circumstances that really pushed me to let go of old ideas and old beliefs and old ways of doing things, because it was no longer rational to keep holding on to them. And sometimes it takes an existential crisis and a literal pandemic to have that happen. And then other times it's little things that occur around you where it's like, this is no longer a good idea. You cannot do that again. And for us, I think we all were hit with the same thing at once when it was called COVID. Mm-hmm. And we all had to reassess and look at our lives and say, like, what are we doing? Does this make sense? How are we approaching things? And for me internally, it was like, we're doing too much. We're spread too thin. We are stretched all over the place. Why are we involved with all these other activities that aren't actually pushing the ship forward? They're distracting the team. They're overwhelming the team. We need to reprioritize and focus on doing less better. And that was a big, monumental, behemoth shift from the way that Ellen Bennett used to run her company. And I think that my entire team would agree with that statement. And it has been not the easiest thing to like ignore the shiny things and just march forward with the path that you have in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Is your team grateful that you've made that pivot?
100%. And it's been a very honest, open, candid pivot where we are all it kind of admitting that there are things that we used to do that we just shouldn't do anymore. And there's parts of the organization that we used to do custom for everyone and anyone, and we just don't do it anymore. And that was a huge, huge change for us because that's how we started. We started as a custom apron business, and now we're really a direct-to-consumer brand that happens to service restaurants too, but it's no longer the core of the business. So why are we letting this thing overwhelm the entire company, right? Because it's complicated and difficult and hard to scale when you have constant custom. So letting go of some of these old truths for us has just been hard, but the team now has more time, which gives them more bandwidth, gives them more leverage. They're definitely happy to have it.
Well, I guess I won't hit you with my ass for my custom apron then, Ellen. I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, shoot.
Pound sand, chick.
You just missed the cutoff.
Hey, we end with rapid fire, so I'm going to hit you with some quick ones, and you just tell me what comes up. You sounds good?
Okay.
All right. One word to describe yourself.
Fast.
One word others would use to describe you.
Assertive.
What's your go-to meal?
Spaghetti and meatballs.
Right on. Favorite restaurant?
Providence.
Favorite book?
The Water Dancer.
A leader you admire and why?
Denny Bruce. He's the CEO of Dickies. And I met him when he was a CMO at Traeger, and he's just a brilliant human that knows how to connect with people on a human level, but also rally an entire organization around him all at the same time. And he's just a hero.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Martha Stewart told me once when I was in my early days, I think it was 1 or 2 years into Hedley and Bennett, she said, hold on to as much of the business as you can for as long as you can. And only when you absolutely need more support financially do you then bring on partners. And at the time, I was completely self-funded and owned it 100%. And just hearing that from her, being this leader in the world in so many ways, it really resonated. And I did exactly that.
Your advice to entrepreneurs starting out?
To just start out and to not be afraid to let go of the first idea and to adapt it to something else. Because when you start, it starts as one thing and then it evolves into something else. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you aren't doing it right. It just means that things are shifting and you got to go where the energy is going.
One thing you wish you knew earlier in your life?
I wish I knew how important it was to not just be running, but to actually be building the internal team and culture. Whereas back in the day when I first started, I was just like, as long as we keep growing the company externally out in the world, like everything will find its place. And really, like, you have to find its place. You have to put things in place. You have to set the structure and the rhythm and the time, the culture. And really caring for the people, making it all happen is just so important. And it took me quite some time and a lot of failures to kind of realize that.
Yeah, no question. What is success to you?
Success is getting from somewhere and then getting to the next somewhere, and just that perpetual motion forward. That feeling of I got to something and so awesome and I can acknowledge it, but then I'm going to look up into the sky and say, like, what's that next big North Star and the next big mountaintop I'm going to run towards? And that journey, that's the exciting part of success. It's not actually when you reach the top of the mountaintop. That's very quick. You're like, okay, I'm here. All right. So should I turn around and keep walking down? Like, what do you do? Right? It's the journey there.
Sure. Hey, so the show's called Game Changers. So one last question. What game changer inspires you and why?
To me, the biggest game changer in my life was my mother, who, after my parents got divorced, she showed up in a way that proved to my sister day in and day out that no matter what happened around us and in our lives, like, we could get ahead and we could make things happen. And it didn't matter our circumstances. We had each other and we had this opportunity to just keep going forward. And it has lived with me so deeply for so long that she is the biggest game changer in my life by far.
Talk about a go-getter and a game changer. That was such a cool conversation with Ellen. All right, so I want to hit you with some takeaways that came up for me throughout our conversation. Number one, the gifts are in the journey. They're in the moments along the way, not in actually what you achieve. Number two, focus on what you have. Don't focus on what you don't have. Number three, the shift from founder to CEO, to the focus from doing to the focus on collaboration and on her people. Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. This episode was edited and sound designed by the team at Sound On Studios. You can find out more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Check it out. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.